Hello there, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back. My name is Prophet, and today I'll be talking about something that I popped up rather recently with just the mass surge of open world games. So I kind of wanted to take up the subject of open world games versus persistent world games, and kind of the big differences that really are there. So, starting out, what is an open world game? An open world game is something that we have seen plenty of within the recent days. We have stuff like Skyrim, Far Cry, pretty much every Ubisoft game is an open world game. Basically, that means that there are few boundaries to where the player can go and what the player can really do. Now, this means that there are few invisible walls, and kind of the parameter or the limiter of the map is rather huge. There is a massive space that you can really move around within, and usually it's cut off by some kind of mountains or at least something reasonable, rather than just invisible walls and a locked door. So, open world games are a world created around one character, which is the player, obviously. Take Assassin's Creed. Every Assassin's Creed game has been an open world game, or at least those of the main franchise. Now, how many of those have actually been a progressive game without the main character? If you remove the main character, would the story even do anything? No, because you are the story, you are the main character. And here comes here comes Persistent World. Persistent World does not really matter how big it is, but it's usually rather large. And the major difference between these two genres of games is that in Persistent World, the main character does not exist. There is no main character, or at least the player is not the main character. This opens up a lot of possibilities, and to me, is a really interesting system of doing things. Take, for example, Elite Dangerous that recently came out. You are not the main character. You are just like any NPC that just flies around, just that you are yourself playing. The world, if you are logged in or not, will progress. Shit will go down, stuff will happen, people will blow themselves up. That's just the way of the game, because everything just keeps moving forward, whilst you, the player, move at your own pace and do whatever you want. Now, let's talk about kind of fusing these two, open world and persistent world. And honestly, I really like the combinations, like they have done with Elite Dangerous. I truly enjoy that, especially within Elite Dangerous. They have given you the solo experience, so you don't have to care about all the other people just messing around, because you can just interact with NPCs and do your own thing, which by itself is a great deal of fun, actually. While to me, and just an open world game such as Skyrim is kind of boring. When I got the hype pieces for Skyrim laid out to me, I were expecting Skyrim to become kind of a persistent world. I kind of expected you to be some kind of main character, but a story that would progress. And for example, this was actually information I got pre-Skyrim release. People told me that the game would have stuff like different villages where they would have lumbermen. If you, at any point in the game, killed the lumberman, then suddenly the village will get overgrown by forest. Or if you killed all the miners in a mining town, then suddenly they will run out of gold and people have to move away. And that to me is a really interesting element to add to an open world game. So fusing those two genres can be vital to create, I would not say a new genre, but really expand upon the current genres that we already have, making them more interesting and more in-depth. Of course, there's great to have some narrative-driven games, such as, for example, an actual proper Assassin's Creed that would not necessarily be a streamlined, pumped-out game, but where you have an open world and you have a narrative. That's great to have, but not in the quantity that we have currently gotten from Ubisoft, for example, releasing, I don't know, 4 or 5 open world games with all different radio towers. Kind of weird. I want to take an example with one of my favorite games, Mountain Blade Warband. Within this game, let me kind of start from the beginning here. Mountain Blade Warband is a game based around modding. It was easier to mod the original Mountain Blade, but Mountain Blade Warband opened up a lot of new possibilities with the multiplayer. One of the most popular mods for this was actually Persistent World, which was just, yeah, the name of the mod, straight up. What this would do is that it would create a massive battle map, or of course user-generated maps, because different development teams would create maps for their own individual server to kind of individualize and make them unique from the other servers. But we had, for a long time, we had the EU servers, the NA servers, and then I think they fused into the Nexus servers or something at a point. But anyway, the point here is that it was a massive map. Every map would probably have around 5 castles, or like 4 castles, 1 commoner town, 1 bandit village, and just a whole lot of just random buildings and stuff, farms that you could take over and so on and so forth. And then you had all of these different factions, like 7 factions, where one would always be like the admin faction so that they could fix and do stuff. And then you always had people, or reoccurring people who would create factions. Remind you, this is all multiplayer. This is 100% player base and 0 NPCs. And yet, some kind of structure would develop, and that was the intriguing part here. You wanted to play there because you wanted to see what happened next. Because to me, for quite a while, me and some friends, we were like 10, 20 people, and we created this brotherhood that worked around some kind of god of justice. So what we would do is that I was like the main religious leader, so I would start going into, we had to capture the church, that we would, every time we logged on, we would recapture the church. And we would almost always have someone online there. So by capturing the church and then, you know, holding sermons and being just the role-playing stuff, which is amazing. I love to role-play, and it was a great way to do so. And on this server, we would just keep expanding our kind of religion thing, and eventually, you know, people would fight you, and there were always recurring factions like the North, Game of Thrones inspired servers partially. Then you had the Town Watch. Always the Town Watch, sometimes the most dickish people, because they would capture the commoner town. They would always hold the commoner town, and then there would be douchebags from time to time, depending on who is in charge there, and, you know, demand high taxes, you know, for protection and all of that to the citizens. And that was great because you could bring on our god of justice, you can RP a reason to attack, and it was always progression on the server, without you actually having to do anything besides minding your own business, which was amazing. And I think not necessarily forcing it to be multiplayer, but giving possibilities for such things within single player games by just having NPCs do all kind of weird stuff, just going about, really ups and create a different gaming experience overall than what we currently have. And I really miss that. Because, of course, it is, wouldn't necessarily say, but how should I say it? Yeah, I would actually say easier to create a space persistent world like they have done in Elite Dangerous, because you don't have to load everything at once. Not nearly all, because everything's just happening on different planes, and then, you know, you can get text files on what happens, you know, updates through text. So that is one way of doing it. But with real players, I mean, I wouldn't even mind creating a game around. If they created Persistent World into an own standalone game, I would be amazed. I would love that. Because it's such an interesting, how should I say, it's such an interesting genre by itself. And you can always think about it as a human psychological experiment, actually. Because it's really like the way that people really interact with each other and the way that they would do things. There's always going to be the douchebags, there's always going to be the cool guys. You know, we would often just have to defend the church because people got offended. People were like, well, no, the Norse religion is what dominates on this server, and they would try to fight us. And it was always like, you know, the struggle and trying to hold fast, and then secretly going on missionaries to try to, you know, convert individuals in the different factions to try to help you from the inside. And there was a lot of intriguing, great stuff there. Every map would always have, you know, a gold source and an iron source, a mine of each. I remember like a long time ago, there was an island that really hadn't been named yet because no one really got the boats to be working. And me and two friends, we were 5 people. We got a boat and we finally got it to be working. Sailed to this island and we named it Jerusalem, because, you know, it was kind of similar to the way Jerusalem area looks like, and, you know, it was just the foundations of what would become a city, which actually in a later map became Jerusalem. So I think we kind of inspired that, or helped inspire that. But on this island, there was one gold source, and gold is worth so much money. You can buy all the kind of greatest armor, because of course you have vendors there, and prices works accordingly to how much supply there is, obviously. So we were just mining up a bunch of gold, and that like the heart will start beating when you're going to sell it, because if you have a cart full of gold and people see you coming from the gold island, oh, there's gonna be a lot of people looking for you. There were some people who got a boat working and started hunting for us, so we had to, you know, we had to dock in such a weird way. And remind you, like, the docking was really fucked up because it's a weird game which is not really designed to have boats in the first place. But when we, you know, parking the boat in a weird way, trying to jump off, trying not to fall into water, because if you fall down into the water, you're fucked, you're dead. So it was a whole lot of intrigue going on there, and, you know, the adrenaline was just pumping, and trying to get through the server without getting killed with a bunch of gold worth, like, say that the top-notch mail armor is worth like 100,000. Say that we were carrying 500,000. That is a huge amount of money right there. And it was just the intrigue. It was an amazing experience playing that. And you always wanted to come back for more. And I think that is the most intriguing part about any kind of persistent world game. Now, taking this back to open world and Skyrim, just picture the game if it just kept moving on without you. Of course, the narratives wouldn't necessarily do so, but in a similar fashion that you have, you know, once you reach a certain area, suddenly a fight between the rebels and the Imperials would start to erupt, and, you know, 5-on-5 they could just clash against each other. Think if that just happened all the time, just randomly, if you were there or not. Stuff like that can really just make the game different and interesting. I'm repeating this a lot, but I think that it's an important part of a new kind of gaming experience overall. Think if, you know, if you killed all the fishermen, a town would not get any food. Maybe you would have to be the supplier and create kind of narratives around that. There are a lot of different things to do in persistent world games, and it's all up to you. For example, me and my friends, you know, one of the days we were like, you know what, let's have a chill time. We found a little place with a tiny wall around, which was a farm. We became farmers. I think from this point on in the video, it's just going to be me ranting about my experiences within this game. So we actually became farmers, as I mentioned there. We held kind of like the gate area with like 2 guards. They were just constantly stand there, and, you know, why would people just bother themselves by standing still for like 40 minutes? Well, obviously you chat to them in the text. That's a large thing. And here comes the important part: greed. People want the money. If you pay them enough, they're gonna do that. What are they gonna do with the money? Get better armor so they can stand there. Yeah, that's the way of persistent world. Why do you trade? So you can get a better ship, better caravan, so you can earn more and trade more. It's just a loop, but it's interesting and it's the fun, it's the progress. So people are greedy in those games. You know, unless you're a good friend of them. If someone comes up to one of your bodyguards and just say, "Hey, I'm gonna drop you 5,000 right now for not assisting your master here," then they would be like, "Yeah, fuck yeah." You drop the cash, they take it, and they're like, "Yeah, go kill him. I don't care." People are greedy, and that's the intrigue here. So, you know, we had the 2 guards. We got a few people to be, you know, kind of peasants, just helping, working on the farm, and then we would just be like the farm lords. It was a lot of fun. Another time, we captured a tiny little mini base where we could sell iron, because there are not that many places we could sell iron. This was kind of an isolated place, so we're like, yeah, that's great, that's really cool. And what we did was that we found like a few guys, and we just drew our swords and lances, and we're like, yeah, you know what? You're our slaves now. Got him a cart, got him a horse to the cart, and just said, you're gonna mine for us now. They mined. Of course, we were like, you know what? You're not being douchebags about the whole slavery thing, disconnecting. So we just ended up paying them, and they we started a little mining corporation. We would guard them, escort them. Obviously, we would get the larger share here because we were paying for all the equipment and all. But still, they were making a lot of money, and that is the fun aspects here. There can be so many instances and weird experiences just occurring out of nowhere that just cannot happen in a narrative-driven game. If I play Assassin's Creed, like wonky, weird shit won't happen unless it's a glitch or a bug, you know? You won't have random people just coming up to you, trying to stab you. Oh, yeah, never mind, they will. But I mean, you can't take anyone as a random slave and make them mine for you, you know? Of course, that's limited to depending on what kind of game it is. But you catch my point here. Like, the randomness, the whatever can happen, because it's a human interaction. Of course, you can do the similar things without human interactions. There are a lot of things you can do if you fuse these 2 genres. And I think too few games do it nowadays. Hope this video kind of explained something at all. And, you know, thank you guys for tuning in. My name is Prophet, and as per usual, thank you for watching. I love you all.